It's Sunday night, November 8 at about 11:15. I was told to verify the time by nationalists this evening. We were informed that our friends in the Zio Patriot circles are about to issue what they consider to be a video damaging of Australia First and its overall interests. They say that this video was taken a number of years ago, and they tend to indicate in their lead up to this what they intend to say about it, is that it proves a connection between Australia First Party and so-called neo-Nazis. Of course, it doesn't prove any such thing. The video is an unusual one, taken in, I think it was November 2011, in the home of a person who makes videos and who is a collector of Second World War memorabilia, including Nazi-type materials. On this occasion, there were a few people present, and someone asked somebody for his experiences of Colonel Gaddafi, who had just at that time been murdered by Islamist militants. This person gave his view, explained that he'd been in Libya and so on and so forth back a long time ago in the 1980s. Another person, a well-known nationalist who edits the party newspaper Audacity, Mr. Alex Norrick, also indicated that he had been in Libya in the 1980s and referred to some experiences. We were all there at the premises that night by some form of general accident, as these things invariably happen. I believe that at some point I am also seen in this video entering a room and possibly leaving it with a drink. It is the intention, as I understand it, of the Party for Freedom, led by Mr. Nick Folkes, to suggest that Australia First is linked to, quote, Islamo-Nazis, whatever that is precisely now meant to mean, and pro-Islamic groups. I'm also led to believe that the producers of the video intend to link the three persons, myself, Mr. Norrick and this other man, with a non-existent Islamic organisation called Muslim 13 or Islam 13, a group that they say is working inside the patriot and nationalist movement in Australia to introduce ideas that favour the Islamic worldview. It's obviously nonsense, as much as the claim that the video links us to alien political ideologies is nonsense. However, the production of their video, or the release of their video, is from their point of view part of the ongoing cyber war and disinformation war and defamation war that they're currently conducting with Australia First and a number of other genuine nationalist forces. This is actually a struggle for the control of, I suppose that's how they would perceive it, of this amorphous patriot movement that has come into being around the issue of Islam in Australia, and which we intend to do our level best to lead on into a general discussion of the immigration crisis in which Australia is placed. I'd like to say a lot more now, if I may, about these Zio Patriots and what it is that they're actually and in fact trying to achieve. It's well known that the group Party for Freedom has criticised Australia First Party quite trenchantly in recent times. In fact, the Party for Freedom members had the amazing gall to put a banner up and stand there being posed, saying that I, Jim Salem, am an enemy of Australian nationalism, whereas obviously I'm one of the people who's helped to define the whole idea. The Party for Freedom, however, does not act alone. And I now have to refer, because I must, and it's also useful that I do, as to details about this video, where it actually came from, and who the choir master of the exercise actually is. The choir master of the exercise is a Liberal Party connected gentleman called Howard Crawford, who operates as a type of 2IC come organiser, come troubleshooter for the well-known councillor Marcus Cornish in Penrith. Australia First has been no friend of Mr Cornish. As is well known, Australia First has criticised the Liberal Party in Penrith, claiming that their struggle, if that's what it is, against the mosques there is fraudulent. We have said that by leading the anti-mosque protests down legalist routes, they are in fact wasting large amounts of people's money, their time and their resources. Mr Crawford, as one of the organisers for Marcus Cornish, has targeted Australia First. What is actually extremely interesting is, as I said to you, this meaningless video was in fact recorded 4 years ago at the home of this gentleman who makes videos. 12 months ago, Mr Crawford was also in attendance at that place and with one of the people who was in this video. Again, they all seem to coalesce there by some accident. But Mr Crawford arrived in the company of a young man who we will call Tyler Winchester and the famous Ross the Skull, with whom, according to Nick Folkes, there is a relationship between us and him. Mr Crawford came there with these two persons for the purposes of making videos. Affidavits can be provided at a later date, should it be that my words now are the subject of defamation proceedings. Mr Crawford was associated with these two persons in the operations of a group advanced publicly, Squadron 88, which styled itself, I suppose, as a neo-Nazi organisation. Indeed, Mr Crawford attempted to suborn these people into various forms of political activity. At one point, he even proposed to Tyler Winchester training at a certain kickbox studio and suggested to him that the Liberal Party had uses for this Squadron 88. I leave it up to my listeners to consider what these uses may well have been. The young man Tyler Winchester has a Facebook page, and one of his friends on that page, in fact one of his only two friends on that page, as of the other day, was old Ross the Skull May and Nick Folkes from Party for Freedom. Mr Crawford also attended a number of functions with Squadron 88. It seems very, very strange that the allegation would now be made by Nick Folkes and Mr Crawford that it is in fact Australia First that has neo-Nazi links, when it is obvious that these are the Liberal Party connected people who do. It's also known that the close relationship between Mr Folkes and Squadron 88 even has, shall we say, a domestic meaning. I'll have to stay vague on that point, other than to say that affidavit material could be made available if ever this becomes the subject of defamation proceedings. Australia First Party has no relationship with either the Squadron 88 per se or any of these sort of people as they organise, but we find that our critics do. It's certainly not that these people are neo-Nazis, because they're not. Mr Crawford is not a neo-Nazi, Mr Folkes is not a neo-Nazi. But they cultivate these relationships for some reason. What that reason may be, I could explain another time, but it's certainly only perceivable from the point of view that they cultivate these links for the purposes of keeping a cat's paw upon the nationalist movement. I would also say to you that in recent times it's become very clear to the Liberal Party group in Penrith that their hold over the anti-mosque movement, the anti-Islamic feeling in Penrith, has begun to weaken. As occurred about a week ago, Mr Folkes launched a Facebook broadside against me personally, suggesting that I was a, quote, Islamo-Nazi, an anti-Semite and so on and so forth. But it only occasioned a lot of criticism of Mr Folkes, including criticism by people who are involved in the anti-mosque struggles. One of these people in particular made it clear that she had broken from Marcus Cornish's line and suggested that the Liberals had in fact stacked the anti-mosque movement, brought in the Christian Democrats, driven out many ordinary people who wish to fight the mosques for reasons of their own, for their agenda. Part of that agenda of the Liberal Party and Marcus Cornish and so forth has been to restrain the activities of nationalism in the western suburbs of Australia First. Mr Crawford's role may indeed be quite unknown to Councillor Cornish. In fact, I would suggest very strongly that the matters that I'm addressing now, Councillor Cornish has no particular knowledge of. That would be inevitable. The Liberal Party works in ways whereby, of course, some sections are not aware of the activities of others. That's a common organisational practice. But the loosening of the grip of the Liberal Party over the people's anti-Islamic movement there being now clear, I would say incites them to even further efforts to make sure that it is not the nationalists who capitalise upon this disaffection from the game that the Liberals have been playing for a long time in Western Sydney. Councillor Cornish and his allies do not intend really to struggle to the end against the mosques. And Councillor Cornish and the Liberals are all in favour of the hyper-development of Penrith. That hyper-development can only be a development that effectively turns Penrith into a Chinese city. And they all know it. The Liberal Party group, to which Mr Crawford belongs, styles itself as Conservatives. I won't discuss now what I think of this so-called conservative group in the Liberal Party because that's a story unto itself. I can only say that in the past they have relied on all sorts of unusual people to enforce, if you like, discipline in the campaigns that they manage. The appearance of this video, we believe, within the next 24 hours on a website influenced by or controlled by Mr Foakes, is probably a last desperate effort to smear Australia First. They hope that this video will travel somehow through the left, through the slack bastard Andy Hutchings network and so on and so forth, to demean, criticise, undermine, whatever you like, Australia First, and alienate us from the large numbers of people becoming notionally available to the nationalist movement in Western Sydney. We believe that people will see through what their video is about, and I think people will start to ask serious questions as to what it is that I have now raised. To sum up very briefly, it is not Australia First that has had these so-called links with neo-Nazis. It is in fact this gentleman, Mr Crawford. Mr Crawford was, briefly, a member of Australia First. He joined, I believe, quite deliberately. There is his membership form dated May 2012. He resigned in September 2013, then to pursue more openly the interests of the Liberal Party in Western Sydney. During the time that he was nominally one of our members, he was denoted for a large amount of highly disruptive activity reported over time to me, which I would say would lead to him being expelled from the organisation had he not resigned from it. But since that time, he has dedicated himself quite aggressively to undermining the activities of Australia First and any similar group in the state. I hope that these comments have been informative. Unfortunately, we will probably have to go over much of this ground again. Thank you and good morning.